Well, thanks so much for joining Making Healthcare Work for You, Different Perspectives and Empowering Solutions. I'm Stephanie Fields, and I'm here with Dr. Apoorv Gupta, and today we are welcoming Scott Becker, who is the founder of Becker's Healthcare podcast, and Becker's Private Equity and Business podcast, and longtime partner at McGuireWoods. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure to visit with you. I had a chance to visit with you and Apoorv a couple months ago and enjoyed it tremendously. So we are so thankful for you having us on. Thank you very much.
I have learned a little bit about you and can't wait to learn more. I know what the world knows that you run the media empire. I know that you are part of McGuireWoods. I know that you have your equity podcast, but what we don't know is your journey. You do everything. It's like Malibu Barbie. Like one day she's an astronaut, one day she's a doctor. You do all of these things and you do them so well. So why don't you start by just telling us, who is Scott? How did Scott get to the point that you went to Harvard Law, then into your practice, and then founding the healthcare empire?
Sure. So I would tell you, Stephanie, this is a red letter day for me. It's a banner day. It is the first time that I've ever been compared to Malibu Barbie. So I am thrilled. No, thank you. That's fascinating. I think at the end of the day, I've straddled two main careers over the course of my last 30 years. One is I'm a lawyer by background. I went to Harvard Law School. As we talked about previously, I had the chance at Harvard Law School to be a moot court advisor for then student and later President Barack Obama. And that was its own fascinating experience, just a gifted person. And then second, I founded Becker's Healthcare 30 plus years ago. And that has been a labor of love that's turned into a primary part of my professional life, of course. But those are the two things: a lawyer by background and founded Becker's Healthcare. I founded Becker's Healthcare a long time ago, and I didn't mean to start a media company. I was originally a young lawyer trying to build a brand, trying to learn about healthcare, trying to learn about the law, and started a small newsletter and a small website about healthcare as I was trying to brand myself as a thought leader in healthcare. And I really did that. It wasn't really a company for all practical purposes. We held a small conference every year. At the time, it was around a specific niche in healthcare. Probably did that for about 8, 10 years or so until I got serious about Becker's Healthcare and was like, oh my God, this could be a real thing, and was really interesting. And that goes back now 20 plus years ago, where we got serious about it and started to build an editorial team, build a sales team. I hired a number of people full time in that business. One of them ended up being Jessica Cole, who ended up being the CEO and leader of the company day to day, just a magnificent leader. And I would say that's an important thread, because the thread that holds all these things together, being able to do the things I love to do, being able to be involved in a number of things, the thread that holds it together is building fantastic teams where we've built leaders in those different areas where, you start off in any business where the old adage is you're the cook, you're the bottle washer, you're this, you're that. And at some point you build out teams, and those teams end up taking on the lion's share of everything. And you get to sort of lead, mentor, manage, do the things you want to do, versus doing everything. And that's the thread that holds a lot of it together. When people say, oh, you do so many things. Yeah, I do a lot of things, but I have a lot of energy for sure, but I'm able to do a lot of things because in both the core things that I do in life, we've built out great teams. Wherever I have failed to build out a great team, the effort that I've been involved in has floundered. So we view it as everything ultimately comes down to teams, and building great teams of people is really everything. You can't do anything without that.
That's awesome. I love it. I love that this is a first for you. I'm so glad that Stephanie kind of rolled out that analogy metaphor at the outset. And I'm thinking, you didn't make Becker so great if you weren't a marketing genius as well. And so maybe there's a doll in it, for Becker's that is modeled on your likeness, or bobblehead.
The many Scots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see it depends who you're talking to. Many people would have it be like that doll that's a great looking doll, although maybe a little bit short, a little bit overweight, but that's that doll, that's me. But then the alternative doll is some colleagues that want to turn it into a voodoo doll. So I've got to be very careful going down that path. We're going to be very careful with that.
Listen, you have lots of giveaway options for your next Becker's Healthcare event.
That'd to be the
I
goofiest thing
love
ever. You would think that my ego had run amok if I end up with
it.
bobblehead dolls or Scott Becker dolls of any sort. We'll probably avoid that. It's probably not the right call, but
Yeah.
very fun. Very
Oh,
fun.
I love it. I love it. It really gets our creativity going. And thank you for playing along with us on that, Scott. I love it. And so, that kind of leads me into sort of like building off of your question. What is Becker's? Why is it so great? How has it become an empire? I get it that, you had this vision, you got ahead maybe before the market did, and you built this great team, which is an incredibly empowering vision of what, for the rest of us, entrepreneurs, entrepreneur wannabes, consultants, and the like, people that are trying to drive change. We can kind of get inspired by that story that, build a great team around your idea. But what else is it that makes Becker such a standout, sort of media empire?
Characterize it however you'd like. I don't know that we use that term empire, but what we do believe in is three or four core concepts that you're highly focused on your niches that you're in, and that you have to be highly, highly focused on, in our world, who are your readers, who are your listeners, and who are your meeting attendees. Those three audiences. And you have to, there's so much noise in the world that you have to really be constantly focused on your niche, your people, who you're trying to be in front of, who you're trying to be useful to. We always say we have to be a magnet to listeners, readers, and attendees, and we have to make sure we are giving them what they want and what they need. So the first thing is really taking care of your niche, really taking care of your customers, and then side by side with that is everything gets done with great people and great teams. Obviously, more and more that's technology enabled, but it is great teams. At the end of the day, especially as the world has moved into AI and into all kinds of things that produce content, the difference is really paying attention to your audience, really focusing on your audience, really taking care of your audience. We're a big believer in short form journalism. We always were. We moved towards that a long, long time ago. And then it's making sure you have a team that understands it's not just producing content, it's connecting with the audience, constantly connecting. And that's why, people talk about, will AI replace jobs? So the friend the other day who's in the auction business, the real estate business, and worried about, is AI going to change this or not change that? And then he's on the phone all day talking to his customers, his clients, his buyers, his sellers. And that's very hard to replace by technology. And like wealth manager, another friend that was with us on a trip is a wealth manager. And it was one of the days where the market went down 2% or got crushed that day. And he's spending a ton of time on the phone connected to his customers to like, it's going to be okay. You have to work on your allocation. It's going to be okay. And what happens with all these things, it's that connectivity. Our team has to do a fantastic job of not just producing great content, but being highly connected with our audience, highly connected with our listeners, our readers, our attendees, and maintaining that connection. And that's especially in an AI-driven world, in an information overloaded world, that connectivity is really, really important. And it's having a great team that does that and sees it and evolves over time. And that team's evolved over time. It's been amazing for me to watch the evolution of the teams and how we deal with people and how we deal with what we do. I mean, it's been literally amazing. The evolution of journalism, the evolution of taking care of customers, those that are vendors and sponsors that pay the bills, those that are audience members that are the reason for being. And it's a constant effort to stay relevant and connected. I see this. I was watching. I could, as you know, at Pervin 70, you were talking to me before. I could dawdle on if you let me. I'm watching Nissan, the great car company, fall apart over the last several years. When we were growing up, Nissan was a serious and a great brand. It has fallen apart. So it's almost like an Andy Grove thing from Intel. You have to constantly be at it, constantly trying to get better. Great teams, great niches, great customers, and constantly at it, constantly trying to get better at whatever you're doing. That doesn't rest. You have to constantly be evolving. The reason Apple is so great, they never said our product is done. You're always getting an update because they're constantly improving. The reason Epic's done so well in healthcare is constantly improving the EMR that they built originally. They put out an original product, and they've never stopped getting better and putting resources into getting it better. And I think that's what we all have to do in everything that we're doing. So I'll stop for a second.
You've said the word teams 1,000 times in this conversation so far. So when you're building these teams, because again, you are excelling on a lot of different fronts, you must have very, very strong teams on all of those projects. So when you're trying to build a team, what are those things? How do you know that somebody has that something special that's going to be able to take this on and live the values that you've set and then keep those same ideals of connection and constant improvement at the heart.
We think the hardest thing in business is the building of teams. If you build great teams, you build great people, you could do a lot of different things. I've seen people that have built great teams and then use those teams in a variety of different businesses. I remember somebody doing that, unbelievable in the healthcare sector. And I've seen a guy named Andrew Hayek do it, who was leader at SCA for a period of time, leader at a bunch of places. Now he's a leader of sort of a private equity startup fund, but he's been crazily successful. And he's had teams of people with him throughout his career for the last 20, 30 years. I've gone to different places and done different things with them, and it's an amazing thing. I think the hardest part of business is sorting out teams, and I believe, for example, it takes a lot of work to sort out teams. You've got to get great people that are highly motivated, that are really good people. You've got to have the view as a leader that you're thriving with them. They're not thriving under you. You're thriving. You're thriving together. So most of the great people that have been parts of my teams have eclipsed me by far in what they're doing. So the people that were with me early on, that were sort of mentored by me or thriving with me, now run the law firm and run the healthcare department and do all those kinds of things. The people that were with me 20 years ago and really getting Becker's Healthcare going, like Jessica Cole, are really running that firm today, are really running that today. And we say a lot of this is, you have to have the mindset that you're thriving and they're thriving. It's not you're thriving and they're getting crumbs. You're thriving, they're thriving, and they're hopefully going to do better than you do over the long run. And that's how you build multiple great teams. And then the other thing is you have to, it's really hard work. You can't prejudge people too quickly. You have to judge people, but you can't judge them too quickly. So I've seen countless times where one person's coming into a firm or a business or some team, and everybody thinks that person's going to be the person that walks on water. That's going to be God. That person's going to be the next leader. And that person turns out not to be. I've seen countless teams where the person that people really didn't understand turned out to have a very strong motor inside and be hyper valuable. And so you sort of have to take a breath when you're first sorting out teams, figure out who's doing what really has to be done, separate the noise from those that are really doing great things, and you have to double down constantly. Like we talk about in business, doubling down on your great customers. As important or more important is doubling down on your great people, recognizing them early, getting in front of that. We were always a believer in building teams. I wanted to see in them what I saw in them almost before they saw it. So we're always sort of preemptively raising them, preemptively giving them responsibility. And one of the things in teams is if you have great people and they don't have a role, they will find a role for themselves, but it often will be outside your firm. So you have to early on, you can't have great people living in vacuums in firms, companies, any place. You can't have them living in vacuums because if they are driven, motivated, smart, good people and motivated, if you don't find spots for them to have a place to thrive, they'll find it elsewhere. And so you have to constantly be proactively helping and looking at and recognizing, we say in business, the real world of business is probably built around 5 to 10 great relationships. 5 to 10 fantastic customers or clients or people. Pick a number, but it's not 1,000. It's not 2,000. It's a handful of really great relationships, and it's sorting out who those are and really doubling down on those, really investing time and energy in those until you understand who they are. And then if you make that effort, that will last a very long time. If you don't make that effort, you'll be running in chaos for the entirety of your career in business.
Wow. I mean, I'm just kind of soaking it all in because this is incredible, not only for our show and our guests, but just for the work we do in terms of driving improvement. That's kind of why our show came into being. It's like to say, who's doing it? Who's figuring it out? Where is it happening? And so from the points you just made, Scott, what I'm really eager to know is how do you see this mirrored in the healthcare industry itself? At the outset of your question, I think you gave a couple of examples, but do you see successful healthcare systems, payers, providers, physician groups that have also figured out how to sustain and lead on the basis of great teams?
100%. And there's so many of them in both the business world of healthcare and in the healthcare system world. You look at people, and I'll give a couple different examples. Gene Woods at Advocate Healthcare understands that it's a thrive world. It's not just Gene, it's all of his other leaders that have to thrive as well. Terry Shaw recently retired from Advent Health, an amazing leader at Advent Health that built that into a 53 hospital system, I think 17, $18 billion system, but did it through constantly building teams of leaders around him and with him. Jonice Spizo at UCLA, Jonice is also a great example of sticking true to their mission of being an absolute incredible high quality system and building teams of people. In the Chicago area, I mean, there's plenty of examples. J.P. Gallagher at Endeavor Health, Howard Chrisman at Northwestern. There's a person who runs Rush, Omar Latif, who's amazing mission-driven, leader. And there's so many great examples of it in healthcare. Nancy Agee at Carillion Clinic, retired recently, but just an incredible job building as a leader and building teams where she didn't have to be the alpha. Lots of people were great. I mean, J.P. Gallagher here in Chicago has done an incredible job of building and cultivating teams and leaders, just incredible. And I watch it closely because it's in our backyard, but there's so many. Intuitive, the robot company, the Da Vinci robot company, the leadership there and what they've done in terms of building a culture, building people, growing leaders. I mean, it's every time you talk to somebody intuitive, they're a bright person who's engaged and turned on. They've just done an unbelievable job of building a culture and building teams. So we see it constantly. We see it. There's obviously in the digital health world right now, there is so much sorting out going on. But anybody who's built anything great has built great teams. I think we might have mentioned Judy Falk earlier, Judy Faulkner. I always mess up on her name exactly. The person who's the CEO of Epic, but the constant commitment to greatness there and building teams and building a huge strength in software engineering and constantly improving. And what they've done is second to none, quite frankly, in our area. So there's so many examples of great leaders who are building teams where they're important, but the most important thing they do is build great teams because you can't run Advocate, which is a $30+ billion system today, with Gene, I mean, not just Gene, it's got to be the teams he's building. He's done an unbelievable job of it. There's so many. Mike Dowling at Northwell's done the same thing. There's so many that they're great leaders, but their greatest leadership is they inspire and build teams.
I think I'd still like to go back in your journey and try to understand the origin story. How did it hit you that teams were so important? Where did you learn that?
There's multiple different places I learned it from. When you're building a law practice, you start off in building a law practice. And when you're building a law practice, it's a fascinating thing. So you have to take care of clients. And when you're first building any business, it's the same case. You have to take care of whatever the business is. And then you also have to be marketing to make sure you've got the next client in a group of clients. And what I watched one of my mentors do is, when you had your world changed when you at least had one person working with you and your clients full time. Because now you were just a little bit freer to do a lot more, both taking care of clients and building the practice. And what happens is, I'm a huge fan of, you also, the loneliest number in business is one. So you can't have one great person, you can't have one great client because you're too fragile. So you ultimately have to build out a team of people and build out a business side by side where they sort of take care of each other. It was very similar in the media business. We were originally in one niche, and we couldn't build the team we wanted to build around one niche. We needed to build a world-class sales team, a world-class editorial team, a world-class event team. And you just couldn't do it without having enough. It goes side by side. You want to build a great team, or you got to have a great business, and it's the same concept. And then as I sort of I'm a learner. I went to Harvard Law School. I am a learner, and I don't mean that not bragging, but I'm a constant learner and I'm a constant reader. And so as I started to do this and build it, I would observe it and I would read. One of the great books on the subject was by Jim Collins, who at one point was one of the premier business authors of a generation, who had a book called Good to Great. And he talks so often about strategy is fine. And strategy, I don't buy into this concept of culture eats strategy for breakfast. No, I think both are very important. What you're trying to do and who you're doing with are both very important. So I'd say for many things, I say and, not or. So culture and teams and strategy. But Jim Collins was very big on the concept, in his book Good to Great about building teams. And if you have the right people in place, you could do almost anything. If you got a great cadre of teams of people in place, you could do almost anything you want to do. And I think he's right on. And that team has to have a purpose. They've got to have a strategy. They've got something they're doing because you can't keep them interested and engaged unless they have a strategy and purpose. But I'm a believer if you put growing a team first, we've had this beautiful situation in the law firm where over the years, if originally we were serving surgery centers, that became health systems, then it became health systems and private equity funds investing in healthcare. And we're able to grow and pivot and develop into these areas into a much bigger firm by having great teams that had some flexibility. And somewhere in the media company, we started in the surgery center area. 20 plus years ago, we moved into hospitals and health systems, orthopedic and spine, and that was when we really started to grow, really started to take off. But it was that core team and core client base that started with us. And being able to build that team allowed us to, okay, let's experiment with this. Let's explore that. And some of the people, like aside from Jessica Cole, Katie Atwood, Laura Derda, Molly Gamble, have been with us 15 years now. That have just been unbelievable leaders in being able to pivot and try new areas. We're always a believer in everything we do. We spend 80% of our effort doubling down on what we're doing, taking care of our core clients, our core business, our core whatever it is, 20% trying new things. And if you have a great team, you could do both. You could really double down on your core business, what it is, and then work on developing these other areas and growing. And we're my learning from it was hands-on, and how law firms work. You build teams of people that take care of clients. I did a lot of reading as well. I was able to sort of categorize my thoughts, put them together, organize my thoughts around what we're trying to do. And it's been, it's the thing I'm most proud of is not that I built a great law practice at the law firm, that there's a dozen people that built great practice that started with me and built greater practices than me and became partners and leaders in the law firm. The thing that I'm most proud of at Becker's Healthcare, yes, we built a great business. We touch a lot of people. We love it. The thing I'm most proud of is people like Jessica Cole that leads that today, who years and years ago, any great leader comes to this spot. Years and years ago, somebody said to me in the law business or the media business, well, do you want to go back to running it? And I'm like, no, because at that point in time, there's no way I could run it as well as Amber then does at the law firm, or Jeff Cockrell does at the law firm, or Jessica does in the media business. And at the end of the day, if you evolve as a leader, at some point, you've got people in every spot that do it better than you did it. And that's unfortunately, or fortunately, this is life and where you want it to be. So we take great pride in that. We've ended up with great leaders in both places that really drive those things that at the end of the day do the entire job, and what they do far better than they ever could. And that's the evolution of business. And I think it's a fantastic thing.
That's amazing. And this might seem off topic. I have one final question, but I feel like this is somehow related. One, you are incredibly humble, and while you're proud of what you've done, you obviously give so much credit to the people who are supporting all of these systems. And two, every time we've talked to you, you have had multiple Sharpies in your hand and changed them through the conversation. So I can only assume that you're taking notes and this is some sort of categorization system. And I need to know about that. So tell us, did you grow up with this humble attitude? Is that something that is cultivated over time? And what is the Sharpie system?
I think for most of us, we're good at certain things, we're bad at certain things. There's so many quotes that I love on this, but for every successful person, every really smart person, they're also idiotic. There's always this understanding that you better treat people well going up, because at some point you're coming down, which I think is very true. I was I'm not overly so, but a chubby 13-year-old boy, and no matter what you do in life, I was always an okay athlete, not great, better in some things than other things. I was always a really good student, not as good as some others. Whatever you do, you better maintain humility, because there's always somebody better than you. If you're me, you always think of yourself as certainly not the high school quarterback, but the guy who was played sports, but wasn't, was good, not great. You think about all these things. There's always somebody. I remember years ago, the law firm bringing in 3 tall, beautiful, patrician-looking guys and saying, "Well, they'll be the next generation of leaders at the law firm." If you're short like me, 5'7", you're like, "Well, how did that happen?" But there's always, there's always somebody who's thin or rich or tall or whatever it is. It is what it is. So it's very easy to stay humble, and and what happens is when you're younger, you're so highly focused. As you're older, you've got a million different things going on, and so in a lot of ways, you can't yourself do things as well as you did them or you'd like to do them, but your teams can, and the other leaders can, because they're still in the prime of what they're doing. So it's not purposeful to stay humble. I feel humble. Like I get, I'm losing a golf to some guy who's a moron. I've got somebody who's outperforming me in this and that and that. It's very easy to stay humble when you understand what you're good at and what you're not good at.
And the Sharpies, what are the Sharpies?
Sharpies I always love, because what happens is by nature, I am probably a little by nature, and it shows up in all my sports. I'm just one bit tense in most things that I do. And Sharpies are so easy to write with that things just flow off of them. It's like in the old days when I had a fantastic professional assistant and I used to dictate everything I did, because it was very easy for me to get words out, where if I had to write them, it was harder and harder. But the Sharpie just makes things so easy for me to take notes with, to write with, because the words just flow out of it. It's not fancy, it's not easy, but I've been addicted to Sharpies for 30 plus years, and it's a relatively healthy addiction in the big scheme of things.
That is a
But that's
fantastic
what
addiction.
that's the deal with Sharpies, though. That's a
And
great
you must have
question.
incredibly thick paper because you're not bleeding onto your previous
We
notes.
go through a lot of notebooks and a lot of paper, and literally we go through a notebook a week,
Oh my
taking
God.
notes and organizing and trying to come back to core concepts. So,
Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation. We were so happy to talk to you and hear what makes you you.
yeah, no, thank you so much. I will always remember the first time I was called the Barbie Malibu, and we appreciate it greatly. No, Stephanie, what a great pleasure to visit with the two of you. Thank you so much. Always thrilled to be on. We appreciate it so much. Thank you very, very much.
Incredible opportunity. What a great chance to learn and have fun and, really pick your brain. Thank you so much, Scott, for this.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you all for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.